She was sitting alone at the wedding until the CEO's mother said, "Pretend you're his bride." No place card, no one speaking to her, not even a glass of champagne. Across the ballroom, someone whispered, "She's not even supposed to be here." Nadia Quinn stayed quiet, fingers wrapped around a warm glass of water. Wishing her burgundy gown didn't make her stand out even more. Then Margaret Wolfe, mother of the CEO, crossed the room, stopped at her table, and leaned in to whisper something only Nadia could hear. A moment later, the nobody at table 17 wasn't invisible anymore. Before we continue, if you enjoy touching and inspiring stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Now, let's get back to the story. She's not even on the guest list. The words weren't whispered, they were meant to be heard. And Nadia did. She didn't look up. Her fingers tightened slightly around the stem of her glass, not from shock, but instinct. It wasn't the first time she'd been spoken about like she wasn't quite real. The wedding reception shimmered around her like a scene pulled from an expensive dream. Tall crystal chandeliers bathed the room in golden light, casting reflections across the white marble floor. The string quartet played something elegant, something safe, as if it was there to remind everyone they were exactly where they belonged. It wasn't even supposed to happen tonight. The Wolfe family had officially announced that Adrian Wolfe's wedding was postponed due to unforeseen circumstances. It was still Adrian's wedding reception, no one else's. The ceremony had been postponed, but the venue, the vendors, and the guests were already in place. But canceling the reception would have meant losing face, and millions in contracts, guests, and headlines. So the party went on. The music played, the champagne flowed, and the press politely pretended not to notice that there was no bride in sight. Everyone played their part, except her. In the farthest corner of the grand ballroom, half hidden behind a towering display of white roses and far too many candles, sat Nadia Quinn, alone. Her dress, a deep burgundy satin that hugged her waist and swept softly around her feet, felt suddenly too bold, too sincere for a room filled with dresses meant to impress, not express. The off-shoulder neckline framed her collarbones delicately, and a pair of pearl earrings shimmered beneath loose auburn waves that refused to stay pinned. She looked beautiful and entirely out of place. Not because of how she looked, but because no one knew who she was. No one had said a word to her since she sat down at table 17. No name card, no conversation. No eye contact. She'd been meant to leave after the ceremony. Nadia had only come as a favor to her godmother, the woman who ran the flower shop that handled all the arrangements. One assistant called in sick. Nadia had stepped in to carry bouquets, pin corsages, and check centerpieces. The plan was simple. Help with cleanup, then go. But somewhere between returning a forgotten clutch and waiting for the valet to find her coat, a waiter handed her a water glass and said kindly, "You look like you need a few minutes to breathe." And that was how she ended up here, in her only gown, at the richest wedding in the city. Sitting alone with a water glass and 1,000 silent eyes brushing past her. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The light caught on the thin silver bracelet at her wrist, delicate, worn, with a single word engraved on the inside. Still. Still standing, still waiting, still here. From the next table over. A woman in her 40s leaned closer to her date and murmured something behind a tight-lipped smile. "Sweetheart, can you move your chair in a bit? You're blocking the aisle." She didn't wait for a response, just smiled with condescension and turned back to her champagne. Nadia adjusted her chair. It made a soft, awkward scrape on the marble floor. A few heads turned. She kept her eyes down. A server passed with a tray of champagne flutes. Nadia raised a finger gently. He hesitated, then pretended not to see her. The tray moved on, of course. Then came the child's voice, loud and honest in a way only children could be. "Mommy, why is the pretty lady sitting all by herself? Did she do something bad?" A few heads turned again. Polite laughter rippled from nearby tables, the kind that asked people to smile and quickly move on. Nadia's cheeks flushed. She glanced at the mother, who offered a tight, embarrassed smile, and turned her daughter away with a pat on the shoulder. And then, before Nadia could even look back at her glass, she heard it. "There you are!" The voice was firm, crisp, unmistakably controlled, a voice used to people listening the first time. Margaret Wolfe. Nadia looked up, startled. Margaret, the mother of the groom, stood before her in an emerald green satin gown. Her silver blonde hair swept into soft curls, and diamond earrings that didn't need to sparkle to be noticed. Her presence silenced everything around her. She didn't smile. She didn't ask to sit. She simply lowered herself into the seat beside Nadia, like it had been hers all along. A few murmurs stirred around the room. Forks paused in midair. Someone dropped a napkin. Nadia's throat tightened. "Mrs. Wolfe, I need your help," Margaret interrupted, folding her hands gracefully in her lap. "I think there's been a mistake." "You're wearing his favorite color," she continued calmly. Her eyes flicked over the burgundy gown. "You're quiet, well-poised, and, most importantly, not dramatic. I need someone with elegance, and someone the cameras won't expect." Nadia blinked. "I don't understand." Margaret leaned in slightly, lowering her voice just enough. "Pretend you're his bride," Margaret said. The words didn't land all at once. They settled, slowly, like snow after a storm. Nadia could only stare. "I'm sorry?" Margaret leaned in slightly, lowering her voice just enough. "Not a real bride," she clarified. "The ceremony was postponed, but the guests don't know that yet. And the press is already whispering. I need someone calm, poised and believable beside him so they stop asking questions." "It's not a full performance, and it's not an announcement," Margaret added smoothly. "It's presence. Poise. You stand beside him. And that's all." She slid Nadia's water glass closer. "You won't have to lie. Just smile. Stand beside him when I give the signal. And let them think everything is perfectly under control." She slid Nadia's water glass closer. "You won't have to lie. Just smile. Stand beside him when I give the signal, and let them think everything is perfectly under control." Nadia's heart thudded. Her eyes darted toward the dance floor, and there he was. Adrian Wolfe, the groom who wasn't a groom, the billionaire who'd never married. Not yet, not until tonight, supposedly. He stood beneath a cluster of white orchids, one hand in his pocket, speaking to an older man in a tuxedo. Tall, composed, the kind of man who never had to raise his voice to be heard. As if he felt her eyes, he turned, their gazes locked. Steel gray met hazel green, and he didn't look away. Not immediately, not like everyone else. Nadia felt the silver bracelet on her wrist slide slightly as her hand trembled. "Take a sip. Breathe," Margaret said quietly, "then decide." And just like that, the invisible woman in the corner became the center of the room, because Adrian Wolfe was now walking toward her, slow, direct, without looking at anyone else, and the entire ballroom was watching. For a moment, Nadia forgot how to breathe. Adrian Wolfe was walking toward her, not with the casual indifference of a man used to being observed, but with intent. With purpose, his gaze never wavered. Each step measured, quiet, controlled. Her first instinct was to stand. Her second was to run. But her feet stayed rooted to the marble floor, and Margaret Wolfe, impossibly composed beside her, simply lifted her chin and murmured, "Don't look so surprised." "You're doing him a favor, too?" Nadia blinked. What kind of favor?" But the words barely left her lips before Adrian arrived. He stopped in front of their table like he already knew every eye in the room had followed him there. Dressed in a tailored tuxedo, he looked like he'd stepped off the cover of a magazine. but it was the stillness behind his movements that made Nadia's pulse skip. Like he didn't just wear elegance, he commanded it. His steel-gray eyes flicked from Margaret to Nadia, then back, quietly asking what this was. Margaret didn't move. "Adrian," she said, voice low and calm, "meet your bride for the evening." He raised a brow, not high, barely enough to notice, but Nadia saw it. And then his eyes returned to hers and stayed there. Of course, his voice was warm but held back, measured. She didn't know what to say, not to him, not like this. "Would you like to stand up?" he asked her gently. It wasn't a command, it was something else, an invitation. Nadia's fingers twitched. She took a quiet breath, pushed her chair back slowly, and rose to her feet. Her gown fell around her like water, and for the first time that night, someone actually waited for her to move. Adrian extended his arm, a formal gesture, but it meant something. And when she slipped her hand into the crook of his elbow, he didn't flinch. He didn't look annoyed. He didn't smile either. But there was a flicker of something under the surface. Recognition, curiosity, or just quiet approval. The bracelet on her wrist caught the light again as she adjusted her grip. His eyes flicked toward it for half a second, then back to her face. Margaret gave the smallest nod of approval, then stood as well. She took 2 steps forward, lifted her chin, and whispered to a passing server, "Champagne for the new couple." The server blinked, then nearly dropped his tray. A glass wobbled dangerously, sloshing golden liquid onto a woman's satin skirt. She shrieked, more from the audacity than the temperature. And suddenly the air changed. Heads turned, voices hushed, laughter fizzled into murmurs. Because Adrian Wolfe, famously single, famously untouchable, now stood arm in arm with a woman no one recognized. And Margaret Wolfe had just called her his bride. Is this a publicity stunt? No. She's real. Look at her. She's shaking. Wait, is that Nadia Quinn? The last voice cut through the murmurs like a knife. Nadia froze. She turned slowly and saw her. Celeste Brandt, daughter of a diplomat, Vanity Fair darling, ice blonde and sculpted like a swan. The ex who was never officially labeled an ex. Celeste stood 10 feet away, holding a champagne flute and a glare so sharp it could slice satin. Her lips curled just slightly. She looked amused, in the same way people look at fire from behind glass. "Well, well, didn't think I'd see you here," she said. Adrian's arm tensed under Nadia's touch. Nadia said nothing. Her mind was racing. How did Celeste know her name? They'd never met, never crossed paths, unless her name had been mentioned out loud recently. "Don't worry, darling," Celeste said sweetly, eyes still locked on Nadia. "We all pretend at weddings. Some people just have more practice than others." Margaret stepped forward, sharp as a blade in green satin. "Celeste, you're in the way." It wasn't a suggestion. Celeste blinked, smiled coldly, and stepped back with slow grace. Adrian leaned in slightly toward Nadia, voice low, ready to give them something to talk about. She looked up at him, heart pounding. "I'm not a good liar." "Then don't lie," he replied, still watching her. "Just walk with me." And with that, Adrian turned, still holding her arm, and guided her slowly into the center of the room. Nadia felt every stare as if it had weight. She walked anyway. Her heels clicked against the marble floor with a rhythm that felt too loud, too exposed. But she kept her head up, because somehow, the way his arm held hers, firm but not forceful, reminded her of something she hadn't felt in years. Dignity. They reached the front of the room, where a photo op was clearly staged with the Wolfe family name behind them in soft gold script. The photographer looked confused. Margaret simply waved her fingers and said, "Take the picture," and the camera flashed. As the light burst, someone near the back turned to another guest and whispered, "That's not the woman he was supposed to marry." And just like that, The entire room knew something had gone very, very wrong with the original plan. The camera flash faded, but the moment didn't. Nadia stood next to Adrian Wolf, hand resting lightly on his arm, back straight, heartbeat loud enough she could almost hear it, and tried not to think about the fact that half the room had just seen her become someone she wasn't. Not a bride, not even a guest. The silver bracelet at her wrist was cold against her skin, a quiet reminder of the truth. A truth she couldn't speak here, not with all these eyes waiting to watch her slip. Margaret stepped in between photo flashes, resting one manicured hand on Nadia's shoulder. "Thank you, darling. Breathe through your nose. And smile with your eyes, not your teeth. Perfect." Adrian, ever the statue, leaned subtly toward her and said under his breath, "I'd say you're doing better than most actresses I've met." That earned him a side glance. "And how many of those have you paraded around pretending to be your wife?" His mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but something close. "Only one, so far." Nadia looked forward again, willing the warmth in her cheeks to calm. Whatever this was, it had a rhythm now, a dance. But she wasn't sure how many steps she could fake. The photographer moved on. Guests began to scatter again, some toward the dance floor, others toward gossip corners disguised as canapé tables. Adrian gently guided her aside, toward a quieter part of the ballroom. "You okay?" he asked, voice low, careful not to draw attention. She hesitated. "I wasn't supposed to be seen tonight." "Well, you've been seen, and no one's looked away since." She didn't know what to make of that. It sounded almost like a compliment, but there was something else in his tone, something cautious, curious. They passed a waiter carrying a silver tray of tiny desserts. Adrian stopped him, took 2 glasses of something light and sparkling, and handed one to Nadia. "Drink this, if nothing else. It'll keep your hands busy." She took it, grateful more for the gesture than the contents. A small, unexpected kindness, one she didn't know how to receive anymore. "Why did your mother do this?" she asked finally. He exhaled slowly, like the answer wasn't one he liked. "She doesn't like being embarrassed." "Neither do I, but tonight she won." From the dance floor, the tempo of the quartet shifted into a soft waltz. Older couples began to move, graceful and predictable. A few younger guests followed awkwardly, like trying to remember lessons they were told they'd never need. Adrian looked toward the musicians, then back at her. "Dance with me." Nadia's eyes widened. "Seriously? You're already in the dress." His voice was so calm it almost made it worse. "Might as well do the whole fairy tale. I don't know how to waltz. Neither do they." He nodded toward a pair who were clearly counting under their breath. "But they're still trying." Her fingers tightened on the glass. Then, carefully, she handed it to a passing server, took a breath, and placed her hand in his again. They stepped onto the dance floor. It wasn't a perfect start. She stepped right when he stepped left. He adjusted. They circled once, clumsy, but coordinated. And then, almost imperceptibly, he adjusted his hand at her waist, slowed the rhythm, and matched her pace. It wasn't graceful, but it was theirs. "Don't overthink it," he murmured. "Just move." She let out a shaky breath, and then laughed, just a little. "Is that your motto for everything?" "No. But maybe it should be." A tiny moment, just a flicker, but it felt like the first real breath of air all night. Then something bumped her leg, hard. She looked down just in time to see a toddler in a bow tie crash full speed into her shin, bounce off and waddle away while shouting, "I was a rocket ship!" Nadia blinked. Adrian chuckled softly under his breath. "You okay?" "I think I've just been tackled by the next CEO of Wolf International." That got a real smile out of him, just for a moment. She looked at him differently after that. He wasn't just the man in the tuxedo, or the CEO of Wolf International. There was something quieter beneath it all. A weight in his shoulders. A man raised inside expectations that never left room for laughter. She understood that kind of silence. The song ended. They stepped off the dance floor without a word. But as soon as they reached the side corridor behind the ballroom archway, Adrian stopped. His expression had shifted again. Not cold, not guarded, just serious. "Tell me your real name," she blinked. "Excuse me? You said you weren't supposed to be seen tonight, which means this, all of this, isn't where you belong. So tell me, who are you really, Nadia Quinn?" The way he said her name, slow, measured, made it sound like a mystery worth solving. Nadia looked down at the silver bracelet on her wrist. Still hiding, still pretending. "I'm no one important," she whispered. "That's a lie," he said softly. "I've met no one important. They don't walk like you do, and they don't stare down my mother without blinking." Her heart stopped. And before she could answer, a sharp voice called from down the hallway, "Adrian!" They both turned. Celeste was back, and this time she wasn't smiling. "Adrian!" Her voice sliced through the hush of the hallway like the edge of a well-polished blade. Nadia turned slowly. Celeste stood a few feet away, Ashe, backlit by golden light spilling from the ballroom. Her gown, a silky ice blue that clung in all the right places, shimmered like it had been chosen specifically to outshine every other woman in the room. And maybe it had. But her eyes, they were fixed entirely on Nadia. Adrian straightened just slightly. A subtle change in posture, not defensive, just ready. "Celeste," he greeted, tone cool but polite. "Didn't know you were still here." "I wasn't," she said with a breathy smile. "But then I saw the pictures happening, and I thought, surely I'm hallucinating. But no, there you are, and—" Her gaze slid back to Nadia. "There she is!" Nadia didn't flinch. She wanted to, but she didn't. Instead, she met Celeste's gaze evenly. Her fingers twitched near her waist, and the silver bracelet shifted with a faint sound, a quiet, familiar weight grounding her. "You know her?" Adrian asked evenly. "Oh, darling, of course I do," Celeste said. "We crossed paths once, not that she remembers. But I never forget faces, especially ones that end up on the arms of men like you." There was venom in the way she smiled, but it was coated in charm, a dangerous sweetness designed to humiliate without ever breaking the rules of polite society. "Nadia's a friend," Adrian said, his voice quieter now, firmer, "and a guest tonight. That's all anyone needs to know." Celeste blinked, just once. A friend. How noble. She took a step closer, too close. Nadia could smell the expensive perfume, like crushed roses and cold ambition. I don't know what little fantasy she's wrapped herself in. "Adrian, but if your mother thinks parading someone like her around will—" "Stop!" Adrian's voice wasn't loud, but it hit like a door slamming shut. Even Celeste froze. "Don't talk to her like she's not standing right here." Nadia didn't know where to look. Part of her wanted to disappear. Another part, the quieter, stronger one, wanted to stay exactly where she was. So she did. "It's all right," she said finally, stepping forward just a little, her voice calm, clear. "I don't need you to defend me." Adrian looked at her. That flicker of surprise again. Nadia turned to Celeste, her words measured. "I didn't ask to be here tonight. I wasn't dressed to impress you or anyone else, and I certainly didn't come looking for attention. But here we are." She took a quiet breath. "So if you want to insult me, at least do it honestly, not with backhanded compliments and champagne smiles." There was a beat of silence. Then, behind them, a crash. A waiter, trying desperately to disappear around the corner, tripped over the corner of a carpet runner and launched a full glass of red wine straight onto a guest's pale gray suit. The man yelped. The waiter nearly fainted. Celeste jumped. Nadia just blinked. Adrian almost laughed, almost. The spell was broken. Celeste recovered quickly, of course, smoothing her hair, tossing one last narrowed glance in Nadia's direction, and saying with a sugary drawl, "Well, some of us were raised for rooms like this. Others just borrow them." She turned and walked away, heels clicking like applause meant for herself. As soon as she disappeared, Nadia let out the breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Adrian turned to her. "You didn't have to say anything." "I know." He looked at her for a long second, then, "You handled her better than most people ever do." "I wasn't trying to handle her," she said quietly. "I was just trying to stay human." He gave her a look, soft, curious again. "You've done more than that tonight." And before she could answer, another voice interrupted them. "Adrian, may I have a word?" It was Margaret Wolfe. Her tone was polite. Her expression was not. Adrian glanced at Nadia, a quick, subtle check-in, before stepping a few feet aside with his mother. They didn't go far, and Nadia could still hear snippets of the conversation. "You didn't tell me about Celeste." "Because I didn't think she'd come." "You should have. I thought she understood it was over." "You thought wrong." Nadia turned away, pretending not to listen, but then Margaret's voice dropped. Softer, but sharper. "What are you doing with this girl?" Nadia froze. "She's not part of this family. She's not trained. She's not even verified." Verified? What was she? A password? "And yet she's the only one who didn't flinch under pressure tonight," Adrian replied. Margaret didn't answer immediately. Nadia risked a glance. Margaret was staring at her now. Her gaze was no longer calculating. It was, uncertain, and maybe just a little afraid. That was when the music shifted again. Someone called for the cutting of the cake. Lights dimmed. Adrian looked at his mother. "If we're putting on a show, we'd better give them a good one." Then he walked back to Nadia, slower this time, and said just loud enough for her to hear, "You're not running away, are you?" "Not yet." "Good." He offered his arm again. "Let's ruin someone's night a little more, shall we?" Nadia smiled. Just barely, and took his arm. They stepped back into the light. But this time the room didn't look quite so tall. She wasn't sure what had changed. The chandelier hadn't moved, the flowers were still too perfect. But something inside her had shifted. She wasn't just pretending anymore, she was choosing. And people were starting to notice. The ballroom had changed. It wasn't the lighting or the flowers or even the music. It was the weight of attention, subtle, but there. People glanced, then looked again. Not just at Adrian, but at her. Nadia Quinn, the woman on his arm, the one no one had invited, but no one dared dismiss anymore. They passed a table where an elderly couple sat watching the dancers with warm amusement. The gentleman, silver-haired and impeccably dressed, leaned toward his wife and whispered a bit too loudly, "Well, she certainly isn't Celeste, thank God." His wife swatted his hand with a small grin. "Hush. Edwin, don't ruin the poor girl's confidence. She's holding up better than I did at my own wedding." Adrian caught Nadia's eye. "You heard that too?" "Loud and clear." "They seem to approve. Give them time. I'm sure I'll find a way to disappoint." He tilted his head slightly. "You know, you're very good at downplaying yourself." Old habit. He looked at her bracelet again, the flash of silver at her wrist when she shifted her hand. "That bracelet," he said. "It's important, isn't it?" She hesitated. "It was my mother's." He waited, not pushing, just giving space. "It's the only thing she left me that didn't belong to someone else." Adrian nodded, the kind of nod that didn't try to fix or comfort, just heard. "She taught me to survive rooms like this," Nadia added, "but never how to belong to them." He didn't correct her. Instead, he led her to a quieter corner of the ballroom where the music was softer and the eyes less obvious. "You don't have to stay." She looked at him, surprised. "Aren't we in the middle of the performance?" "You've done more than enough," he said. "You don't owe them anything." Nadia looked down at her shoes, then slowly back up at him. "And what about you? What do you owe them tonight? Everything. Nothing. Depends who you ask. I'm asking you. Adrian paused. I owe them the illusion that everything is still under control. There it was. The truth. Quiet. Unpolished. And suddenly the man who'd been untouchable all evening looked a little more human. You don't seem like someone who enjoys pretending, she said. That depends. He looked at her now, directly, gently. Is this pretending? She opened her mouth, closed it. That was when a soft voice interrupted. Adrian, darling. They turned. Margaret Wolfe approached, her expression a careful blend of warmth and calculation. No smile this time, only the smooth precision of someone used to steering outcomes with a glance. Miss Quinn, she said with a nod. Would you join me for a moment? Alone? Adrian glanced sideways. Is that really necessary? Yes. He looked at Nadia again. You don't have to. It's fine, she said quietly. I'm not afraid of your mother. I am, he muttered, just loud enough to make her laugh. It was brief, but it loosened something in her chest. A micro-victory, not over Margaret, but over herself. She followed Margaret through a small side corridor lined with portraits, Wolfe ancestors, all staring down with the same distant confidence. Margaret waited until they were alone before she turned. You surprised me tonight. You and everyone else. You carry yourself with grace, Margaret said. Margaret, slowly, even when you're out of your depth. Nadia raised an eyebrow. That was almost a compliment. It was. Silence. The air between them tightened. I know Celeste hurt him, Nadia said. I know tonight wasn't about me. Margaret studied her. You think this was revenge, wasn't it? Maybe at first. But not anymore. Margaret paused. You didn't run. That matters to me. Nadia crossed her arms gently. I'm not sure what you want me to say. Margaret stepped forward, slow and deliberate. I want you to consider something unusual. Which is? I'd like to offer you a position. Nadia blinked. Excuse me? At Wolfe International, in communications, training, image, and public representation. It's where we place people who know how to stay composed under pressure. And if it suits you, it could later expand into community partnerships, the side of the company that actually connects with people. I've already spoken to HR. You've what? You handled yourself better than half my staff tonight. You were composed, smart, respectful, and not once did you ask what was in it for you. Nadia stared at her. I was pretending to be your son's fiancé. Exactly. There was a silence long enough to feel like a challenge. This wouldn't be charity, it would be earned. Why would you trust me with your company's reputation? Margaret's eyes flicked toward the silver bracelet. Because I know what it looks like when someone still has something to prove. Nadia didn't know what to say, and before she could figure it out, your footsteps approached from behind them. Adrian. Is everything all right? He asked, voice calm but protective. Margaret didn't flinch. Perfectly. Did she threaten you? He asked Nadia. Only with a job offer. He blinked. That's new. Margaret gave a small smile. Think about it, she said. If you say no, at least you'll have an actual reason to walk away from this family. She turned and walked off, leaving only the scent of expensive perfume and possibility behind. Adrian watched her disappear, then turned to Nadia. What did she offer? A chance. And what do you want? She looked at him. To stop pretending. Adrian paused. The ballroom noise returned, laughter, music, the gentle rhythm of celebration continuing as if nothing outside it existed. Then let's start with something real, he said, offering his hand. One honest thing right now. Nadia hesitated, then reached for his hand, but just before her fingers touched his, a flash from a phone screen lit the hallway. A gasp. Someone had snapped a picture, not just of them, but of her, close to him, eyes locked, hands almost joined. Oh no. Adrian turned sharply. Nadia's heart dropped. Because whoever took that photo had already run off and was heading straight back into the ballroom. The moment was already gone. The photo, the one they didn't agree to, didn't pose for, didn't even know was being taken, was already flying across the room. Nadia watched the woman disappear into the crowd, phone in hand, face flushed with urgency. The kind of urgency that only meant one thing: gossip. Adrian stepped forward, scanning the ballroom like a soldier bracing for impact. "I'll take care of it," he said. "What does that even mean?" Nadia asked. He looked at her. "It means they'll twist whatever they saw. So we give them something untwistable." She crossed her arms. "And what does that look like?" "It looks like we stop hiding by the cake table." He extended a hand again. But this time, she didn't hesitate. They stepped back into the light, side by side, like it had been planned all along. The reception was still buzzing, but the tone had changed. Less laughter now, more curiosity. Heads turned, conversations paused mid-sentence. People wanted a scandal. What they got was poise. Adrian and Nadia walked together to the heart of the room, not holding hands, not pretending anything they couldn't hold, just standing, visible, unshaken. From the stage, the MC, clearly flustered and scanning a list of names he didn't recognize, adjusted the mic and said, "And now, would the happy couple, the Wolf family, please join us near the cake?" He'd been told through his earpiece not to mention the bride, not even once. A few polite chuckles escaped the crowd. Adrian leaned toward Nadia and muttered, "I don't think he knows who's getting married tonight." "Neither do we," she whispered back. Still, they moved forward, past Celeste, who sipped her champagne with a smile too wide to be sincere, past the photographers, past the curious stares. The cake towered beside them, white fondant, sugar flowers, silver details that shimmered under the chandeliers. It wasn't just a dessert, it was a monument. Margaret appeared beside them, her expression unreadable. "Stand still, both of you. Let the camera do its work." "Are we cutting this thing?" Nadia asked under her breath. "Only symbolically," Adrian replied. "Apparently, it's filled with styrofoam and ego." Margaret hissed something between her teeth. Possibly smile. And they did. For the camera, for the guests, for the sake of the lie that was starting to feel uncomfortably close to a truth they hadn't dared name. Then Nadia felt it, the weight of Adrian's hand gently resting over hers, as the photographer said, "One more, a little closer." Her bracelet touched his cuff. And in that split second, Nadia realized she wasn't pretending anymore, not entirely. She liked being beside him, not for the power, not for the attention, but for how he made the noise of the room shrink, how he didn't apologize for her being there, how he looked at her like she was someone worth standing beside. "We should talk," she whispered. "I know," he replied. But before they could step aside, a sudden wave of motion rippled through the guests, people looking down, phones buzzing, eyes widening. A voice somewhere near the back said, too loudly, "Oh no, it's already online." Adrian turned sharply. "What is?" A young woman with a sequined clutch held up her screen. "It's on social media. Someone posted a story," said the Wolf CEO, announced a secret engagement to a mystery guest. "Already?" Nadia breathed. "There's a video too," the woman added. "Someone caught the moment you touched hands by the cake." "It's looping on 3 wedding gossip pages." Nadia felt her stomach drop. Adrian exhaled slowly, like he was calculating the damage in real time. "They tagged your name," the girl added helpfully. "Nadia Quinn. People are already searching you." Nadia blinked. "How do they even know my name?" "Celeste," Adrian muttered. It had to be her. The ballroom was no longer a ballroom. It was a stage. Everyone had their lines. Everyone had their roles. And right now, Nadia was no longer a quiet woman in the corner. She was the center of a storm. "I should leave," she said quietly. "No," Adrian said without hesitation. Adrian, this isn't... Let them talk, he said. Let them scroll, whisper, speculate. If one photo is enough to break what we've built in the last 2 hours, then we were never anything at all. That stopped her. So what are we? He looked at her. I don't know, but I don't want it to be over yet. Her chest tightened. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't a declaration, but it was real, and real was more than she'd expected tonight. She opened her mouth to answer, but Margaret stepped forward, her voice low, precise. Damage control begins now. Adrian, you need to give a statement, preferably something that sounds like affection, but doesn't confirm anything. Nadia, smile, but only with your eyes, no teeth, you're not an actress. Mother, this is about brand integrity. This is about a person, he said, sharper now, not your press strategy. Margaret blinked. Nadia felt the tension spike. She didn't want to be a wedge between them. She didn't want to become someone else's crisis. She touched Adrian's arm gently. It's all right, I'll go. But before she could step away, Margaret's voice shifted. It was quieter now, more cautious. No, you stay. I'll handle the press. Both of them turned. Margaret looked at Nadia, and for the first time her expression wasn't cool or calculating. It was uncertain. They like you, and they like that he looks less untouchable with you beside him. Adrian raised an eyebrow. So I'm more likable now that I look fallible? Now that you look alive, Margaret corrected. Nadia didn't know what to say, but Margaret didn't wait for a response. She turned and walked toward a cluster of journalists with a grace that suggested this was just another boardroom. Adrian let out a slow breath. I think she just gave you more approval than I've gotten in a decade. That's deeply concerning. Agreed. He smiled, tired but honest. Let's get some air, he said. Gently tugging her toward the balcony doors, she nodded. But before they reached the exit, someone stepped into their path. A man in a headset, pale, sweating. You need to see this, he said, handing Adrian his phone. It's not just a photo anymore, it's a headline. Adrian looked, his jaw tightened. His jaw. Nadia leaned closer, and there it was. Wolf CEO secretly engaged to unknown florist's assistant. Margaret Wolf approves. Unknown florist's assistant? Nadia's voice was steady, but her fingers tugged reflexively at her silver bracelet, turning it against her wrist again and again. Adrian held the phone for another second before locking the screen. Ignore it. It's a headline, she said, trying to laugh. Nobody ignores a headline. They will, eventually. She gave him a look. Not angry, just tired. That's easy to say when your name isn't the one being mistaken for a scandal. Nadia, I was invisible an hour ago. Now I'm trending because I wore burgundy and sat at the wrong table. The balcony doors opened behind them with a whoosh of warm air and distant string music. Adrian guided her gently toward the stone railing where the city glittered in the distance like a secret kept too long. You were never invisible, he said quietly. They just didn't know what they were seeing. That silenced her. The weight of his gaze, steady, respectful, unafraid, felt heavier than any whisper in the ballroom. She folded her arms, still staring at the lights. I don't belong here, she murmured. No one belongs here, Nadia. They survive it, perform it. You're the only one who's not performing. Another silence passed between them. But this one didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt earned. Then came the breather. A woman in a floral shawl, older, cheerful, and entirely too enthusiastic, stepped onto the balcony and gasped softly when she saw Nadia. Oh, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but you look exactly like that girl from the romantic drama. What's her name? The one with the cheekbones and the sad eyes? Nadia blinked. I don't. You know, the one who dies in the end. Beautiful performance, tragic, just tragic. Adrian cleared his throat politely. This is Nadia Quinn. The woman clapped her hands. Ah, even the name fits. Lovely. You two look wonderful together. Such chemistry. She floated off, humming to herself. Nadia blinked. Did she just foreshadow my funeral? Apparently in a very flattering way. A small laugh escaped her lips. Genuine. This night is surreal. It's not over yet. Adrian leaned beside her on the railing, hands folded in front of him, posture relaxed, but his eyes kept scanning the room behind them. Like he knew this calm wouldn't last, and it didn't. A voice echoed faintly from behind the curtain separating the balcony from the hallway. I'm telling you, Margaret's losing it. She brought in a nobody to make a point, and now she can't control the narrative. Nadia froze. Another voice, lower. Sharper, you think Adrian's doing this willingly? The board is already whispering. If this girl becomes a liability, they'll make it his fault. She doesn't have pedigree, no money, not even connections. And yet somehow, she's standing next to him. That's the real problem. The voices faded as the men walked past the balcony doors, oblivious to the fact that she'd heard every word. Adrian saw her expression change. What was it? She shook her head. Nothing new, just confirmation. Of what? That I was never meant to fit in. I was only meant to be used. No, he said firmly. She turned to him, not angry, just heartbreakingly honest. This isn't your fault, Adrian, and it's not your mother's either. I stepped into a story that wasn't mine, and now everyone wants to rewrite me. Adrian stepped closer. Then let you tell it. Tell who? The tabloids? The shareholders, your mother? A pause. Yes, all of them. Starting now. He took her hand. Come with me. They re-entered the ballroom together, not through the side door, not discreetly, but through the main archway, under the chandeliers, where the dance floor glowed and the whispers returned like wind around glass. This time, they didn't slow down. Margaret was speaking with a small circle of donors near the wine table. Her posture was still perfect, but there was tension in the corners of her mouth. She looked up as they approached, her gaze unreadable. Adrian, she said, I'd like you to hear something, he replied. From Nadia. Margaret arched an eyebrow. Now? Yes, now. All eyes turned to her. And Nadia, heart pounding, mouth dry, stood a little straighter. I know I wasn't supposed to be part of tonight, she said calmly. I didn't arrive with an invitation. I wasn't dressed by a stylist or coached by a PR firm. I don't have a powerful last name or an inheritance behind me. But I've watched people all night perform, posture, protect their place at the table. And I've realized something. I'd rather be underestimated than over-polished. Because at least that means when I speak, you'll know it's real. The silence that followed was thick, uncomfortable, raw. Margaret studied her for a long moment. So you're choosing honesty. I don't know how to be anything else. Margaret's gaze dropped briefly to the silver bracelet at Nadia's wrist. Something softened. Then I suppose I owe you the same. Nadia didn't expect that. Margaret's voice lowered. I brought you in tonight because I thought you'd be easy to control, elegant, quiet, a temporary distraction. But you stayed, you stood up, and you didn't take the bait when Celeste tried to humiliate you. That means more to me than you'll understand. A beat. Then Margaret looked at her son. We'll need to manage the fallout together, both of you. And then, to Nadia more gently, come by the office Monday morning. The offer still stands. As Margaret walked away, the guests slowly returned to their wine and music, unsure if they'd witnessed a scandal or the beginning of something real. Adrian turned to her, voice quieter now. That was brave. No, that was overdue. You're not just part of this story anymore, Nadia. She looked at him. Then you'd better be sure you want me in it. And before he could respond, a phone buzzed again. Only this time, it was hers. She glanced at the screen. One new message from an unknown number. I know who you are, Nadia, and you don't belong with them. Nadia stared at the message. I know who you are, Nadia, and you don't belong with them. No sender, just the words. As if someone had been waiting, not just watching, but waiting for this moment. Her hands trembled slightly as she locked the phone. The pulse at her wrist fluttered, making the silver bracelet feel tighter than it should have. For a second, she wanted to tear it off, as if that could rewind the last 2 hours. "Everything okay?" Adrian's voice pulled her back. She looked up at him, calm. "Composed, even now. How did he do that?" "Someone sent me a message." "What kind of message?" She hesitated. "The kind that knows too much about me." He frowned. "Show me?" "No." "Nadia?" "Not yet," she said quietly. "Let me breathe first." Adrian studied her, then nodded once. "Do you want to leave?" "Desperately." "Then we go." There was no dramatic exit. No announcement. Adrian simply offered his hand, palm up, no pressure. And for the first time all night, Nadia didn't feel like someone being escorted. She felt like someone being trusted. They passed through the side doors where warm city air met them like a balm. The world outside was slower. Softer, even the streetlights flickered, as if they too were trying to be gentle. A soft tug at her dress made Nadia glance down. A small girl, no more than 5, stood beside her with a petal in her hand. "You looked sad," the girl said. "So I brought you this. It's from the floor, but it's still pretty." Nadia knelt slowly, taking the petal as if it were gold. "Thank you. It makes people be nicer. That's what my grandma says." And with that, the girl ran off. Nadia stood up, petal in hand. "That's the most sincere gift I've gotten all year," she said. "It's probably more meaningful than the press release we're about to write." They shared a small smile. But behind it, Nadia still felt the words from the message echoing like steps behind her. They reached Adrian's car. A sleek black sedan waited under the portico. The driver opened the door silently, but Adrian waved him off. "We'll walk a little." And they did. Just past the end of the drive, there was a small stone bench under a tree wrapped in fairy lights. Probably for smokers or bridesmaids with blisters. But right now, it felt like a world away from the glittering pressure inside. They sat in silence for a moment. Nadia ran her thumb over the petal, then finally said, "I never told you where I'm really from." Adrian looked at her, said nothing, so she went on. "I grew up about 2 hours from here, not even on the map, really. My mom worked 3 jobs. I learned to fix our sink before I learned to braid my hair. We never had enough, but she taught me how to make enough look like plenty. She died when I was 17. Cancer, quick, messy. I got a scholarship for college. Dropped out to take care of my aunt, then took a job delivering flowers. That's how I ended up working with Eleanor." He listened, not like a man waiting to respond, but like someone who understood what silence could hold. "So no, I don't belong in ballrooms, or on social pages, or next to you." "I disagree with the last part," he said softly. She met his eyes, and for the first time he looked unsure of himself. Just a little. "Do you think this is all happening by accident?" he asked. "That I picked you out of the air to make Celeste jealous or to satisfy my mother's power trip? Isn't that exactly what happened?" He shook his head. "No. My mother may have started this, but I chose to keep it going. Every time I stood beside you tonight, that was my choice." Her throat tightened. Then a buzz, her phone again. She pulled it out slowly. Another message. "Still pretending to be one of them? Or did you forget what happened in 17? Adrian saw her face change. "What is it?" "Nothing good. Let me see." She hesitated, then handed him the phone. His eyes scanned the message, then returned to her. "What happened in 2017? Nadia sat back, exhaling. "I thought it was buried, forgotten." "It's not." "No," she whispered. "Apparently not." Adrian waited. Quietly. Nadia stared at the fairy lights overhead. Her fingers went again to the bracelet, spinning it slowly. In 2017, I was briefly connected to someone, a man. He wasn't a good person. It didn't last long, but it lasted long enough for people to whisper, "Who was he?" Someone with a title. Someone married. Adrian's jaw tensed. You were blamed. I was discarded. She stood, walking a few steps away. He said I lied, said I invented the whole thing. His wife believed him. His friends defended him. I left town a month later, started over, changed numbers, thought I erased everything. But someone didn't forget, she nodded. He walked up behind her, not close, not touching, just there. Do you want me to find out who sent this? What if it's someone inside your circle? Then they'll regret thinking I protect liars. She turned to face him, raw, guarded, but no longer hiding. You really think people like me and people like you can exist in the same sentence? He gave her the softest look she'd seen from him all night. We already are. Then he pulled out his phone and typed something quickly. What are you doing? Sending my mother a message. What kind? The kind that says, from now on, if anyone wants to know about us, they come to you. Nadia stared at him, and before she could answer, her phone buzzed again. Only this time it wasn't a text. It was a photo, an old one, her, 2017, leaving a hotel in tears. The caption, "Want to try hiding again, Nadia?" She stared at the screen, her breath catching in her throat. The image was old, grainy, unfocused, but it was her, eyes swollen, coat half-buttoned, leaving a hotel lobby in the rain, alone. She remembered the way the air had felt that night. Cold, sharp, like even the sky didn't want her there, but what froze her now wasn't the photo. It was the caption. Want to try hiding again, Nadia? Adrian stepped closer, looking down at the screen, his jaw tightened. How long have they had this? I don't know. Do you know who took it? She shook her head. I thought I'd erased that year, burned every bridge, deleted the accounts. You didn't burn the bridge, he said. They just never let you cross it in the first place. She looked at him. I don't want this following you. Then let it follow us. The words hung in the air. Simple. Direct, no flourish, no performance. And in them, Nadia heard what she'd never been offered before. Solidarity. They sat back down on the stone bench beneath the fairy lights. I need to tell you the full story, she said. Okay. He was a politician's son. I was working at a local florist back then, too. He came in once, said he wanted help, planning a surprise for his wife's birthday. Adrian didn't interrupt. We started texting. Harmless at first, then it wasn't. He sent flowers to himself from me, then claimed I'd been stalking him. When I tried to defend myself, they called me unstable. Adrian's hands folded in front of him. Still listening, still present. I lost everything that year, not just the job, friends, my apartment. I even thought I'd lose my mind. But you didn't. No, she said quietly, because my mother raised me better than to surrender to liars. He nodded once. Then his phone buzzed. He checked it. Then looked at her. I want you to come with me. There's someone I want you to meet. Now? Yes. They took a quiet car back toward Wolf headquarters. Not the skyscraper, but a private annex behind it. One of Margaret's old boardrooms, rarely used now. Margaret was already there, arms crossed, silver blouse catching the low lighting like a mirror made of silk. Is this necessary? She asked without looking up. It is, Adrian said. Show her, Mom. Margaret slid a printout across the table. Nadia leaned in. It was another message, delivered anonymously. Only this time it wasn't sent to her. It was sent to Margaret. You chose the wrong girl. Next time, she won't walk out of the hotel. Nadia's heart dropped. Someone's escalating, Adrian said. This was sent directly to the Wolf Family Press inbox, Margaret added, and blind copied to 4 gossip outlets. None of them have published it yet. Yet? We have hours. Maybe minutes. Nadia felt her stomach twist. I never wanted this kind of attention. No one wants this kind of attention, Margaret replied, her voice sharper now. But the world doesn't ask if you're ready, it just watches. Nadia looked at her bracelet, the tiny engraving catching the table light. Still standing, still fighting. You don't have to protect me, Nadia said. I'll disappear. Again. Margaret's eyes snapped to hers. Is that what you think this is? An escape clause? Isn't it? Margaret leaned forward. You stood in a room full of people waiting to rip you apart, and you didn't blink. You spoke like someone who had nothing left to prove, and yet you keep apologizing for existing. That's what happens when the world tells you you're a mistake long enough. A long pause. Then, unexpectedly, Margaret stood up and walked to the side cabinet. She opened a drawer, pulled out a sealed folder, and handed it to Nadia. This is our internal security report. The photo of you, it wasn't leaked from our event. It was uploaded from a private encrypted server. So it wasn't a guest. No, it was someone who's been waiting, watching. Adrian took the file gently and flipped through, then stopped. He turned the page toward Nadia. There it was, a name and a photo. Gregory Ward. That's him, she whispered. That's the man from 2017. Margaret frowned. He was on the donor list for the wedding. Nadia stepped back, breath shallow. He was there? In the room, watching you and smiling for cameras. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Margaret said something Nadia never expected. You don't leave. You stand taller. Excuse me? If this man wants you to run, you stay. If he wants to scare you silent, you speak louder. He's playing chess with someone who's not afraid to flip the board. Adrian glanced sideways at his mother, almost impressed. Was that a metaphor? Don't make me regret supporting your companion. You mean partner, Adrian said, gently correcting. Margaret gave a single nod. Partner, then. A pause. Then, the breather. Margaret pointed at a printed article beside the folder, a wedding tabloid photo of Nadia and Adrian by the cake. Why is there a small dog photoshopped into this picture? Adrian blinked. That's a meme, Mom. A what? Never mind. The tension eased just enough for Nadia to breathe again. And then, her phone lit up. Another message. No words this time. Just a video. She tapped it. The screen lit up with shaky footage. A hotel hallway. Dim light. A woman's voice. Her voice. Crying. Pleading. It was a recording from that night, from 2017. And it had never been seen by anyone else before. Until now. The video played on Nadia's screen, and for a moment she forgot to breathe. The hallway was dim, the carpet a dull red blur. And the camera angle shifted, as if held by someone's hand, someone hiding. Then came her voice, 17 seconds. That's how long it lasted. But the sound of her pleading, her voice cracking, her attempt to walk away, all of it came flooding back. Not just the memory, but the humiliation, the helplessness. The fear of knowing that no one would believe her, because back then, no one did. She stared down at her phone like it had turned into a weapon. Adrian stood beside her, his body still, but his jaw locked tight. Margaret stepped closer. Where did that come from? It was sent to my phone, Nadia said, her voice low. No caption, no threat this time, just me. Someone wants to remind you what it felt like to be silenced, or wants me to silence myself again. She looked down at the bracelet, and for the first time, it didn't feel like a symbol of stillness. It felt like a tether she was finally ready to unfasten. No, she said softly. Not this time. Adrian looked at her. What do you want to do? She raised her eyes, steady, grounded. I want to speak. To who? Everyone? Margaret frowned. That could backfire. Or it could end this, Nadia replied, but it has to be on my terms. A long silence filled the room, not from doubt, but from gravity. Then we do it properly, Adrian said. Controlled, recorded, on our platform, no leaks, no edits. Margaret tapped a manicured finger on the table. I can have the Wolf media team set it up within the hour. No media team, Nadia interrupted. Just me and him. I'll speak the truth. I won't perform it. There was a pause. Then Margaret, to everyone's shock, nodded. Good. A strange quiet fell. Then a small breather. Margaret's phone buzzed. She answered with one tap, expecting audio. But it was a video call, and her face appeared instantly, upside down, on screen in front of the entire room. Oh, for heaven's sake, she muttered, turning the phone twice before giving up and hanging up altogether. Adrian stifled a laugh. Even Nadia cracked a faint smile. Margaret, adjusting her earrings, muttered, Technology is for vengeance, not conversation. Then, back to Nadia, composed again. When you're ready? The recording setup was simple. No stage, no makeup. Just a small, clean room with a neutral background, one camera, one chair. Adrian stood behind the glass. Margaret watched from her phone in the hallway, pacing like a general. Nadia stepped in. The assistant gave her a countdown. 3, 2. She looked straight into the lens. My name is Nadia Quinn. She took a breath. And for the last 7 years, I've been trying to disappear. In 2017, I was involved, unwillingly, in a situation with a man of power. He was married, respected, connected, and when I rejected his attention, he turned the narrative against me. He called me unstable. He erased his messages. He told people I was delusional, and because he had money and I had none, because he had lawyers and I had rent, they believed him. Her throat tightened, but she didn't stop. I lost everything, and I rebuilt quietly. I didn't speak because I thought silence was the cost of moving on. But now, someone wants me quiet again. Someone sent me reminders, threats, pictures, videos. So I'm here to say, publicly, I'm not hiding, not anymore. Her eyes softened. To the women who've been erased, I see you. To the ones who were told they were too dramatic, too difficult, too dangerous to trust, I know you. And to the men who think they can rewrite our stories for us, I hope you're watching. She glanced at her bracelet, then slowly, deliberately, unfastened it. Still doesn't mean silent. She placed the bracelet beside her, a symbol no longer worn, but claimed. The video faded. The response came in waves. Within 15 minutes, it was trending. Within 30, 3 major news outlets ran the video. Within the hour, Gregory Ward's legal team issued a public statement denying all allegations. But it was too late, because this time the world was listening to her, and someone else was listening too. A knock came on the conference room door. A security guard stepped in. There's someone downstairs asking to speak with Ms. Quinn. Who? He wouldn't give his name, but he said this would make her come down. The guard handed her a small envelope. She opened it. Inside was a single photo, not of her, but of Eleanor, her godmother, standing outside the flower shop. What is this? Adrian asked. It's a warning. Margaret stepped forward, her voice sharper now. He's not trying to ruin you anymore. He's trying to isolate you. Nadia's voice was calm. Then he's about to find out what it feels like to be alone. She handed the photo back. Tell him I'll come down when I'm ready, and when I do, I won't be alone. Adrian looked at her. You know this isn't over yet, right? No, she said, meeting his eyes. But it's finally begun on my terms. The next morning, the city didn't feel quieter, but it did feel clearer. Nadia stood in front of Wolf International's glass tower, not as a shadow, not as someone slipping through a side door, but as a woman who had walked through fire and still chose to rise. The receptionist stood when she saw her. Good morning, Ms. Quinn. It was the first time anyone had said her name there like it belonged. She took the elevator alone, watching her own reflection in the chrome doors. Hair in a soft bun, a fitted navy blouse, no makeup beyond the basics, no mask. When she stepped into the boardroom on the 27th floor, Adrian stood immediately, not as a formality, but as a man who knew what she'd survived. "You didn't have to come today," he said. "That's exactly why I did." He nodded. "You okay?" Still standing. "And still you." They sat. On the table in front of them was a slim black envelope. Seconds later, Margaret Wolfe entered the room, poised as ever, but something in her presence had shifted. Her edges weren't gone, but they had softened. She dropped the envelope onto the table. Gregory Ward dropped his defamation suit, issued a vague health-related statement. Every media outlet is retracting last night's headline. Nadia let out a slow breath. "Thank you," she said quietly. Margaret tilted her head. "I didn't do it for you. I did it because men like him don't deserve to own the ending. You took that from him, and you did it without needing anyone to speak for you. That matters." There was a beat of silence. Then Margaret tapped a magazine on the table, showing a still from Nadia's video. "But please, next time you make a global statement, wear a softer neckline. Strength doesn't have to be so structured." Adrian stifled a laugh. Nadia raised a brow. "I like structure." "Clearly," Margaret replied, and swept out of the room without another word. When the door clicked shut, Adrian leaned forward. He pulled a small leather box from his jacket and slid it across the table. "Something of yours ended up with me." Nadia opened the box. The bracelet. But now it was different. Where it once said "still," now it had been delicately re-engraved. "Still," rising. Her throat tightened. "You re-engraved it." "I had it redone by the family jeweler," he said softly. "Someone I trust with things that matter. I wanted it to reflect what you are now. Not someone waiting, someone rising. Thank you. You don't need my thanks, Nadia." He looked at her gently, steadily. "You just need to stop apologizing for being exactly who you are." She slipped the bracelet back on. It clicked into place like it had been waiting for this version of her. "You're staying?" Adrian asked. "If I leave now, I'd be proving them right. And if you stay, I get to prove me right." He smiled, then stood, extending a hand. "In that case, dinner tonight? No tuxedos, no risotto, just real food and full plates." She grinned. "Only if we start with dessert." "Done." In the weeks that followed, the world didn't slow down, but it shifted. Nadia appeared on one interview only, and she spoke the truth calmly, clearly, not to punish anyone, not to become a symbol, but to close the chapter in her own voice. And then she walked away from the spotlight. Instead of fame, she chose purpose. She accepted Margaret's original offer, head of community partnerships at Wolfe International. Quiet power, no press, real impact. And as for Eleanor's flower shop, it received a grant through Wolfe Foundation funding. No strings, no headlines, just legacy honored. Gregory Ward disappeared from public life, and no one missed him. Months later, on a warm evening, Adrian and Nadia sat barefoot on his apartment balcony, sharing roasted bread, strawberries, and cheap wine in chipped mugs. No cameras, no staff, just silence. The good kind. "You know what I love most about you?" he asked. "Besides the fact that I didn't crumble under your mother's wardrobe critiques?" "Besides that?" "Okay, what?" "You make the world feel less performative." She tilted her head. "And you make power feel less exhausting." They clinked their mugs together, not for celebration, just for presence. Nadia wore ivory, not a dress made to impress, but one that moved with her, quietly, like something loved and worn before. Her silver bracelet still gleamed on her wrist, now with one final engraving added to its curve. Still, rising, chosen, cherished. Because being loved didn't erase her strength, it amplified it. Adrian wore no tie, no cufflinks, just open sincerity, and a look that never once left her face as she walked down the short aisle. Nadia didn't fight to become a hero. She fought to be heard. And when the world tried to erase her, she didn't scream. She spoke clearly. And that was enough. Because sometimes the most powerful kind of love isn't the one that rescues you. It's the one that stands beside you until you remember who you are. 1 year later, there was no press, no designer gowns, no floral arches dripping with sponsorship tags. Just 12 chairs in a sunlit garden behind the flower shop. Eleanor had insisted on using leftover peonies. Margaret, surprisingly, had arranged the seating plan herself and refused to sit in the front row. Nadia wore ivory, not a dress made to impress, but one that moved with her quietly, like something loved and worn before. Her silver bracelet still gleamed on her wrist, now with one final engraving added to its curve, still, rising, chosen, cherished. Adrian wore no tie, no cufflinks, just open sincerity, and a look that never once left her face as she walked down the short aisle. When they reached each other, they didn't read their vows, they spoke them. "You didn't save me," she said. "You stood still until I remembered I could walk on my own." He smiled, voice steady. "And you reminded me that power without love is just noise." They exchanged rings. No music, just the soft sound of wind through the trees. And Eleanor crying quietly behind a bouquet she couldn't stop adjusting. When the small crowd clapped, it wasn't loud, but it was full. And that evening, back in the apartment where they had shared their first real meal, they lit one candle and danced barefoot in the kitchen. Not to celebrate being admired, but to celebrate being seen. Now you tell me, if you were her, would you have spoken? Or walked away again? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if this story moved you, please give it a like, subscribe, and rate it from 0 to 10. See you in the next story.